This week we are continuing our series on the 12 powers, our 12 spiritual gifts. You know, I enjoy preparing these talks so much. It doesn't matter if it's the first time that I've spoken on this topic or the 10th time. I always learn so much. When I started this 12-week series back in August, I thought, I'm going to invite some of my Unity Minister friends to participate. And so then, of course, the next question in my mind was, so who should talk about which topic and what order should they go in and all that kind of stuff. And then I just stepped back and I thought, seriously, Vicki, there's a power at work in their lives that is greater than anything that I could come up with or plan. So let me do it this way instead. I put out the call to these friends of mine and I said, doing a series on the 12 powers, choose the one that you would like. And so I am left with, if you want to call it that, with not my favorite ones necessarily, but with the ones that were unspoken for. But as I said, I do enjoy researching and exploring these topics so much, and even more so topics that I probably wouldn't have chosen for myself. So the fact that I am giving the talk on divine order right now, today, is actually an outpicturing of divine order. The most evident expression of divine order is visible all around us, and that is our natural world. We can observe nature in a very orderly way. Each day, the way each day unfolds, the sun rises in the east, always. The moon goes through its cycles. And every season we can see and rely on the order. You've noticed that the leaves are already starting to turn. The plants have their cycle. There's parts of our gardens where those plants that we put in the spring, they're finished. And we take those out and we're planting other things that like the cooler weather in the fall and the winter time. The crickets are blasting out their love songs. And, I had thought, I was pretty sure that that's what they were doing, but, I wanted to check, so I went to Google, of course, and I put in something like crickets sound or something like that. And I just have to share with you, it was very interesting what I found. Two completely different takes on the topic of crickets noise. So the first one that I happened to see was CDs, lots of CDs and songs, or I guess not songs, soundtracks of crickets. And it's like, sleep with ease with crickets, and 10 hours of the nightly sound of crickets to lull you to sleep, and all these wonderful, ways of enjoying the cricket sounds. And you might have already guessed this, on the other half was how to get rid of crickets, how to make them stop making that noise, special earplugs and blinds for your windows and things like that. So I don't know, it's just kind of funny how we all look at things differently. We are all impacted by things differently. And then have you heard the geese this week, in the last couple of weeks? I'm sure you have. You can hear the honking start, and then if you're lucky, you can catch a glimpse of them in the sky as they talk to each other, communicate with each other, and create their formations for their long migration south. Order is all around us, and it happens naturally. I have a poster, I think I've probably mentioned this before, in my office to remind me about this. It's a quote by Lao Tzu, and it says, "Nature never hurries, yet everything is accomplished." Nature never hurries, yet everything is accomplished. The rain doesn't hurry. The river doesn't make an effort to flow to the sea. It just follows its natural course. The leaves don't struggle to change color. They just do. Nature is efficient. Everything is accomplished and unrushed. The reminder to me is just this is why I have it right in my office, so I see it all the time. It's like, if nature can accomplish all of that without rushing, without hurrying, without effort, then certainly I can accomplish my little things the same way. So why don't we? What's the difference between us and the leaves and the geese and the crickets? There's a big difference. There's a big difference. We have been given the gift of choice. We talked about this last week. It's one of the aspects of our divine power of will. We have more than instincts to direct our actions. We have reasoning powers and we have the ability to analyze things. We also have the ability to reflect and remember the past and step back from a situation so that we can see the bigger picture, so that we can see the many options. Many years ago, many years ago, I had canaries. I got these two little young canaries. They were very sweet and really brought a lot of joy into our household. And then one day, they were a few months old, I looked into their cage, and in the bottom is a little egg just sitting on the bottom, on the paper on the bottom. And so I hurriedly, no internet back then, anyway, I got my canary book out and read about what's going on, what should I do? And what I was told was that they're ready to, nest and bring some young into the world. And so what I did is I went to the pet store and I bought this little teeny box of 1-inch long cotton threads that they could access through a little hole and a little plastic thing that looked like a nest, and stuck that in the cage. Well, over the next 2 days, those two little canaries pulled out those little threads and lined that little dish, that little bowl, and then they would line it again, and then all the threads were going in the right direction. And then the mom, I guess, sat on it. It's like, no, it's still, the hole is still too big. And then they'd line it again, and within 2 days, there was a perfectly formed nest. And the next day, there was an egg in the next nest. And over the next 3 days, there were 3 more eggs there. Now, then of course, a short time later, they hatched. Next thing you know, they're feeding their young. When the mom was on the nest, the male would feed and then come and feed her so that she could sit there without moving off the nest. And I thought, they'd never done this before. Maybe they remember their nest when they were born, but they have never made a nest before. They've never figured out how to do that. They've never seen a little egg break open with a little teeny baby canary in it and known how to feed it. And yet there they were, accomplishing all of this perfectly. Now, how are we different from those birds? Well, we have our own ideas about how things should be done. Those birds did not discuss the location of the nest. They didn't discuss how big it should be or if it should be higher or lower. They weren't counting the days until those chicks were born. They didn't decide who's going to feed and who's going to sit on the nest. Only we would do that, right? Yes, we can easily see divine order in nature. And it is also really important to remember that the divine order is at work in our lives and in ourselves. If we want to cooperate with divine order, then we need to start at the beginning, which the word order implies. Like a recipe, there's an order to follow. Some of you know that Joseph and I started on a plant-based eating. We're vegans now. We started that in January. And in our household, Joseph prepares the meals and I usually make the desserts. So now, okay, no eggs, no butter. Well, I went to the internet, looked up vegan desserts, and there's thousands, so there's no problem there at all. But instead of usually making my usual, concoctions by heart, I actually had to follow the directions. I had to get a recipe and follow the directions. Now, I can think that step 4 should go before step 2, or it would just seem right to me, that it should be done in this way and not in that way. But if I don't follow the directions, I'm not going to get the results I'm looking for. I had a few disasters. Well, they weren't really disasters, but they weren't all that tasty. But now we got it down pat. And one of the reasons is because I follow the order of the recipe. So for most of the things in our lives, there is an order that will bring us the results that we're looking for. There is an order. I can cooperate with it or not. It's my choice. It's my choice. So what are the steps to establishing divine order? What comes first? Well, instead of acting first, it's best to first establish ourselves in divine mind, in universal energy, in God mind, whatever name you want to call that, to realign ourselves with our infinite potential. In Unity, we have a way of doing this, which is through prayer and meditation. This is our fourth principle. We do it several times. Every time we gather in celebration, anytime we have a meeting, our board meetings, our team meetings, we always incorporate these two elements. And this is why. We always start there. Being still, bringing our attention to our divine nature, to the source of all good, the place where every question is answered, where every need is met, every idea originates. This is why we go there. This is why we start there. And it's the first step in bringing divine order into our lives. Once we've got ourselves rooted in source, then ideas flow, possibilities emerge. What follows is vision and clarity, which always brings better results. Like washing our windshield before we get into our car and start to drive. That's the first step. Then we can see where we're going. You know those maps in the mall? When you go into a mall and there's a great big map that has all the different floors and all the different stores and everything like that. And so we come in and perhaps we're looking for a shoe store. So we find the thing on the map, shoe store is in, G4. And then we look on the big map and we find G4. But the part that's missing, we can know where we want to go. But if we don't know where we are, then all of that information has no value, has no use. We wouldn't know which way to turn, whether to go to a different floor, if we're going the right way or not, unless we know where we are. That's why it's always important that I love those maps when they have a big star. It's like, you are here. It's like, okay, now I know how to proceed. And that is what prayer or centering does for us. It puts us back to square one, to the source, so that we know where we are. And we know where we are, that the source is not outside of ourselves. It is within us. It cannot be separate from us. We carry it with us wherever we go. So if we take time to check back into source, we will never be lost. We'll always know which way to go. So that's step one. Once we start down the path that has been revealed to us, there will be many adjustments to make along the way. It's not a straight line. It's not always a straight line. I would venture to say it's never a straight line. Think of all the turns, twists and turns your life has brought you so far. Different homes that you've lived in, different jobs that you've had, relationships have been formed and dissolved. We are never going to know the whole path. What we are looking for is the next step. That's order. Like the headlights on a car, it reveals what is close, what is right before us, but it does not reveal the entire journey. This process of activating divine order is not hard. We know how to do it. We just forget sometimes. I am a doer. I tend to start with action. So I have had to train myself, and it took time, and I'm not always successful over many, many, many years to center myself first, to rest in the field of all possibilities, and then see what is mine to do, what the next step is. We can do it. We can all do this. And we will get some clues provided for us when we are trying to impose our own personal order instead of allowing divine order to express. So struggle, disharmony, weariness, all of these are clues that we might want to take some time, go back to source, rest for a moment, and receive some insights or direction. We might need to adjust what we're trying to do. Sometimes it's a matter of timing. Timing is an aspect of divine order. Perhaps it's not what you're trying to accomplish, it's just not the right time for that to take place. To everything there is a season. These are very wise words. I'd like to close with a quote from this book. Your God-Given Potential, Unfolding the 12 Spiritual Powers by Winifred Hausman. And she says, a divine plan is unfolding through you now. You have a magnificent purpose on this planet Earth. It is your contribution to the uplifting of humankind. But this plan needs to unfold in an orderly manner that will result in consciousness development for you. So two things are being accomplished at the same time. On the one hand, the plan is showing you how to serve, and on the other, you are growing in awareness.